At that stage, 50% of the population in the world was living on less than $2 a day. So, poverty was a very real, significant issue. And so I was powerfully touched by it. And I came back and set up and raising money for this charity. And then one day, the coin just dropped and said, wow, what about if you changed your business model where you can make it a purpose-driven organisation? The more successful that the business become, the more you can give away to fund microfinance people and help move people out of poverty. And that was the penny drop that just went, wow, I can find a purpose in making money now. It's not just about making money for money's sake. I can actually do something to significantly change my impact into the world.
Hello and welcome. It's Never About Money community. I'm really excited by this episode. Is capitalism a dirty word? Can we harness the forces of capitalism to improve the basic living conditions of those global communities less fortunate than us? Do firms exist to make decisions to maximize profits for the benefit of shareholders solely? To answer these questions and more, I'm joined by Allan English, founder of ASX-listed hospitality equipment company Silver Chef, founding chair of the Funding Network, and Allan is also a recipient of an Order of Australia for philanthropy and services to the community. So excited to have you on, Allan. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Joe. Nice to be here.
So maybe, Allan, you could start with just giving us a little bit of a background into your journey in founding Silver Chef, and which I believe you listed on the stock exchange in 2005.
Mm-hmm. So my Silver Chef journey was really way back in the 80s. Do you remember the days of dial-up pizza just being launched in Australia? You know, those very, very early days. Wow, you can get a pizza delivered. Well, we were importing from America these fancy conveyor pizza ovens, and they were technology's leading edge. They were going to be able to make things a lot easier and smoother for the pizza operators. At that stage in America, home delivery pizza was taking off at a rapid rate of knots, but it hadn't hit Australia yet. So I was overseas at a food equipment show and saw the opportunity and thought, wow, I think that'll work in Australia. So I secured the agency for these pizza ovens and negotiated a deal, came back to Australia and saw really the only players in town in those days was Pizza Hut. They had the big huts all over Australia. Oh, yeah. And in America, they were doing home delivery pizza at a rapid rate of knots. And they were owned by the same company, Pepsi Cola. So I flew down to Sydney and said, hey, listen, you guys are going to get in this home delivery pizza thing like they are in the US? I said, sure. These are the ovens. This is what they look like, the specifications. When are you looking at rolling it out? 3 months' time. Terrific. So I got an order for a container of ovens to be shipped from America for Pizza Hut. I got back, rang their factory. They said, congratulations on your order. That's wonderful. That'll be $180,000 cash up front. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I've got Pizza Hut. They're not going to go broke. No. You're a new distributor. You've got to have cash up front. So my partner and I mortgaged our houses to the hilt, borrowed off aunties and uncles, did the whole 9 yards, put the money together, sent it to America, and the ovens duly arrived 3 months later. Flew down to Sydney to see Pizza Hut, and they said, oh, look, we're running late. We're going to be about 3 months late. So I went, oh, okay, well, maybe I can sell them for the independents. Well, the problem I had was my ovens were $27,500 each, and the old style baker's ovens that everybody else was using was $6,000. So I kept getting rejected everywhere. Eventually, the bank started sending me notifications that the arrears of the interest hadn't been paid. It's now pressure to start coming on for closing us out. And of course, we'd used our family home as a security. And
wow.
I got to the stage of 14 days notice had come in, and Pizza Hut kept on delaying their start dates. So I had a shed full of ovens, and I thought, well, maybe if I can put some of them out on rent, I could get some rent coming back, which would cover the arrears to the bank on the interest and buy me some time until hopefully Pizza Hut get their act together and get these ovens rolled out. So I went back out to the mum and pop stores, and everybody was happy to rent them. They just were too frightened to come up with a capital amount to do it. So then they asked me the question, well, if I buy it in 3 months' time, how much of the rent are you going to give me back? I thought, oh, that's a good question. So I then designed the business model, which was really you can rent the equipment anytime for 12 months. and you can buy it, and I'll give you 75% of whatever the rent you've paid back off the price. So it was a rent, try, buy system. But if it all turned to crap in 12 months' time, you could give the oven back to me and you wouldn't lose your house. So it was a way of designing a product that was going to give financial assistance to small business when they're at
Mm,
the early startup phase, but they had a get out of jail card and they weren't
mm.
going to lose their house. And for
So,
small
so,
business, yeah.
So this really had like the actual innovation had a
Mm.
degree of empathy in it because it was creating a solution for the problem that you had, and also trying to solve the issue of I need to make a quid so that I can survive.
Yeah,
Isn't it amazing that the entrepreneurial spirit
yeah.
often, from what I've spoken to a lot of people about this, often starts with a situation of scarcity.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's true. And fitting the needs, and seeing what the needs were of the marketplace at that time, because I knew I had the problem of getting finance, because all the young kids that were coming into the home delivery pizza sector that were really excited were all in their 25 to 35 age group. And
Mm,
few of them had a house. So I knew it was going to be an ongoing problem for me to be selling pizza ovens at that price if I couldn't get finance solution fixed. So
how did this take off? How did this take off, Alan? Like
well, it,
what?
it, it went really well. I mean, we couldn't put too much out because we had to keep some available for sales to keep the cash coming in the door.
Yeah.
So eventually the Pizza Hut thing did take off. And so therefore I was taking the profit from the sales to invest in more stock for the rental street. So I had
Mm,
to keep building a sales business. And the sales business became bigger and bigger as the home delivery pizza boom took off. And then I acquired some other companies, and we ended up being the largest equipment supplier to McDonald's in Australia and all the other fast food chains. So it became quite a big company, but the profits were being poured back into this rental stream because it was very hard for me to get funding from banks. Said, listen, you've got a 12-month contract, you don't even recover your capital. How do you expect me to lend you money?
mm,
So I had a problem with getting funding from my own side of it. So I had to generate out of profits. But
mhm,
eventually got to the stage where I could sell off all the food equipment sales business and got a large capital amount to come into the business to fund the rentals. And I thought, wow, I've got it made. I finally got my capital solved. And then, 4 years later, I was out of cash again. I'd used it all up funding this rental model.
mhm,
And then I asked myself a really important question, which was, well, why do you want to make more money? Because at that stage, we were making 50 grand a month. This is, back in the 80s, late 80s. And it was a good income. I had 6 staff members. It was a very simple business. And then it came, well, now do I go round two again for another big run? And then I thought, well, why am I making more money? I've got a comfortable lifestyle. I lived in the same house I lived in for 25 years. So I wasn't into big boats or cars or any of that rubbish. That didn't sing my bells.
mhm,
So I stopped for a while and said to my sales manager, mate, you got 50 grand a month to invest. That's it. Slow the business down just to use the cash we've got, you know.
mhm,
And then I went off volunteering and running wine, food, and jazz festivals and having a bit of fun. And then eventually I donated some money to a charity called Opportunity International. And they
mm,
did microfinance in the developing world. And it was a very simple process of giving a loan to a woman for $200 to start a small business and work themselves out of the poverty cycle. And I really liked that. That really resonated with my belief in helping small business. So I made a donation and about 2 weeks later, they rang us up and said, "Listen, next time you're in Sydney, can you come and see us? I'd like to chat to you." So I went to Sydney, met the founders, got taken to a small room, and then I thought, "Oh, here comes a bite. Here comes
Are
a
they
bite for another
selling you
donation."
a fake watch? Selling
Yeah,
you a fake
yeah,
watch?
yeah, yeah. And but they said, "No, listen, we don't have an office in Queensland. Is
Yep,
there any chance you could be a volunteer for us to raise money
yep,
in Queensland?" I said,
mhm,
and remember, I'm in this lost zone in my life at that stage, not really quite sure what my next steps were. So I said, yeah, sure, look, I can do that. But look, one thing first, I want to go to the field to see the work in action rather than just your pretty little brochures. I want to see what's really going on the ground before I commit. And they said, sure, sure, let's work out some dates. So we worked out some dates, and on the plane on the way home, I'm thinking about it and I said, gee, those dates are right in the middle of the school holidays. And at that stage, my son Nicholas was 15 years old, and I'm saying to him, mate, what are you doing during the school holidays? And he said, I'm going surfing with my mates. And I said, no, you're not. You're coming with me. And I took him through some of the toughest slums of the Philippines you'd ever want to see. And I saw how microfinance was actually working for some of the poorest people in the world. At that stage, 50% of the population in the world was living on less than $2 a day. So poverty was a very real, significant issue.
Mm.
And so I was powerfully touched by it. And I came back and set up and raising money for this charity. And then one day, the coin just dropped and said, wow, what about if you changed your business model where you could make it a purpose-driven organization? The more successful that the business become, the more you could give away to fund microfinance people and help move people out of poverty. And that was the penny drop that just went, wow, I can find a purpose in making money now. It's not just about making money for money's sake. I can actually do something to significantly change my impact into the world. And so then I immediately went out and hired someone to take over all my volunteering activities and then went back to work. And with that sense of passion and purpose, it was away we went to get to the stage of listing on a stock exchange. So yeah, it was quite a run.
It's amazing. What an amazing story. And I'm curious about the origin. I think we moved from sort of, for-profit business to all of a sudden an altruism and a want to actually help others. And I'm
Mm,
curious about curious about the trigger points that got you to that point.
yeah.
Do you think that even if Silver Chef wasn't a success and financially you weren't as successful as you were, do you think at some point that idea of flicking to having a more altruistic approach would have occurred? Um,
Mm,
do you, like how did it work? Is it as a
yeah.
result of the money that is it a result of the money that sort of
No.
afforded you the capability to do that, or you know?
Mm. Well, I guess it's a combination of both things. I mean, in that lost space where I was uncertain about what the next steps were for me, I
Yes.
did a 9-month course called Generating Transformational Change, GTC, it was called.
Mm,
And it was an educational course that was really working on uh, what are the components for generation of change? When you're going to do transformational change, what are the components of that? And within that space is quite a lot of your own internal work. I was a meditator in those days, and I'd been very actively interested in philosophy. I'd attended a school of practical philosophy. I'd actually done quite a bit of the internal development work. But what this course had shown me was how to map out and see patterns of activities and how to shape your life in alignment with that internal value that you have, internal alignment about what you want to see into the world, and then shaping it. So, and I always had a worldview that I own the business never owned me.
mm,
We are two separate entities.
mm-hmm,
My identity of me wasn't the business. The business was
mm-hmm.
sitting externally, and it was always to be used as a tool to generate whatever I perceive to be the right outcome for. So those internal elements are part of what shaped me, I think. Yeah.
So is it that the education that you undertook actually talked to something internally that you felt, confirmed maybe some internal beliefs that you innately felt anyway, or was it the education that brought about the awareness that you should go about this?
Mm.
Does
Yeah.
that make
Good.
sense?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I think it's quite interesting because uh, the aspect of going internally to be able to identify those shifting moments in your own sense of awareness, there is a space of uh, a quietness that sits within us, that sits there. And when you have ideas or something that resonates deeply, it seems to go one step below that, and suddenly there becomes an awareness of this feeling. Oh yeah, that's right for me. This is part of my uniqueness as a human being,
Mm,
and
mm,
and the recognition of those moments in our lives when we see ourselves individually. Just we are all unique individuals. There is
mm,
only one Joe and there's only one Alan. There's
mm,
only you can have had the experiences that you've had in your life. So to shape your life and in alignment to your own particular uniqueness and your contribution into the
mm,
world,
mm.
then that's when you know you're finding truth.
It's like we look for the education that kind of gives us the words to articulate the feeling that we have
Mm,
internally.
yeah.
It's almost like a confirmation bias. We're looking for those things that can really kind of confirm the pathway that we want to go down internally if we actually listen to ourselves. And so I feel like this giving sort of aspect, this meaning that is assigned to helping others, is something quite almost biological. It's almost
Yeah.
in us.
Well, I think that's right. It's about the awareness of that, though, because if we get
Yes.
caught up into an internal monkey mind, we never get to the space of understanding that what is that uniqueness. I
Yeah.
did for 5 years. Every Wednesday night, I used to go to the School of Practical Philosophy in Brisbane,
Yes. Yes.
and just loved it. And it was just a practical example. Was you would take a subject every week, and you'd take readings from all the philosophers and wise men and women of our past in
Mm-hmm.
history talking about that particular subject. For example, beauty. So every poet has had an expression of beauty. And the thing was, neither accept nor deny anything you've learnt tonight, but in the next week, apply something that resonated for you into your life, and then come back and share with the group the following week. And you'll see beautiful insights from the other participants in the classes that identify what really deeply resonated for them.
Mm-hmm.
And after the 5 years, my sense of reading what the great philosophers and wise men and women of our past were all saying was, the key example is to love and to be loved, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but also to live your life to be of benefit to another. If you can do those three components, then you have the key ingredients for a happy life. So that then really shaped a lot of my thinking to be able to say, okay, well, how can I shape my business that's going to be of benefit to another? What's that resonance feel like? And that's
Mm.
where part of the shaping of my thinking into the giving aspect, I suppose.
And I suppose it comes back to a comment that you made offline to me, that the business doesn't own me.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
you
that's very,
actually
very important.
you created a business that or you informed the shape of the business to serve your, I suppose, your humanity to some extent.
Well, but it's a bit more selfish than that, Joe. It was to
Okay.
serve my sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It's what is my reason for existence? What am I here to do in this journey that we have? What's going to maximize the fullness? Because there's a very important shift that happens internally within us when you get that sense of alignment. What actually happens for me and how it felt for me was I gave myself permission to be the very best possible version of me into this world, because it was no longer about ego. It was no longer about success in the perception of others.
Hmm.
It was what's sitting in pure alignment for what I am here to do on my journey. And when you give yourself permission to succeed, it's extraordinary how powerful you can be.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. In my intro, I sort of said, is capitalism a dirty word? And, when I think about capitalism, it's really about having the ultimate freedom to allocate, capital to where we choose. Yet I can't reconcile the idea that there's so many societies that are struggling for basic standards.
Mm.
And yet capitalism is our best chance at being able to deal with that. Are we? Is it the fact that it's not capitalism that's broke? It's perhaps our collective greed that is the issue.
Yeah, and also equality. I mean, one of the challenges is that we somehow feel that we are better than another. That
Mm.
that competitive drive that sits within us as humanity means that is a life of someone living in the slums in the Philippines somehow less important
Mm.
than sitting around. I
Mm.
just recently came back from Los Angeles on a trip, and I was absolutely astonished with the number of every bridge that we drove past on an overpass had campsite underneath it of tents and homeless people. Yet there was 186 billionaires living in California, okay, and yet we have such a disparity and dysfunction in that society. I mean, that's sad to think that we don't have a broad enough worldview to value the equality of a human spirit as equal.
Mm. Mm. Do you see that that capitalism can be a force for good, and how do you see the connection between business helping and
Hmm.
um
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, no, I'm still a strong believer in capitalism. It's the best model that we've got so far, and until
Mhm.
someone can come up with a better model, this is what we've
stop
got. So
stop potting it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So at the moment, I'm working with what is, right? And
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
what is.
Yeah.
But I was a very active member in the B Corporation movement in Australia and overseas, because using business as a force for good, I think, is very real. I've been able to demonstrate that, once we got to the stage of listing on the stock exchange, I gave 50% of our family shares to form a foundation to make the foundation the largest shareholder. So that way, all my staff and shareholders all knew that we're a purpose-driven organisation.
Mm.
Occasionally, my wife reminded me that I gave away my 50% of the family shares, but
It's a good
but
point.
yeah, that was a fair comment. It was a fair
Yeah, she
comment.
makes a good comment. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but that's the exercise of shaping I'm talking about from capitalism itself. You can shape things to have more purpose in it. I think we're at a really fascinating stage of development of capitalism right now in our current times, because through the COVID experience of people now working from home and those sorts of stuff, they're starting to see that they want more choices into their lives.
Mm,
And there are also the younger generation coming through, obviously, justifiably really concerned about the environmental impacts and sustainability into the future world that they're going to be living at.
mhm,
So now we're getting talented people who are choosing employment to saying, I want to work for companies and organizations that represents the values that I hold to be true and what I want of the future. I'm not
mm.
going to work for a company just for the sake of making money.
Why is
You know,
there this generational change, Alan? I know the old days of, someone going and working for a big institutional bank and making
mhm.
a, a huge amount of money. I mean, they're still there, obviously, but
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
bit of a shift in the younger
Oh,
generation, isn't there?
no, absolutely. I mean, I was fortunate enough to win the 2006, 2013, I think it was, Entrepreneur of the Year awards for Ernst and Young, and I got invited into the University of Queensland to come and talk to their MBA classes, and it worked out pretty well, and I've been doing it ever since. And the shift is back then, the smartest students in that MBA class, their total end goal was to get a job working for Macquarie Bank and make $1 million a year. That
Mm,
was that's where the top of the crop were all focused. When I go and talk to the MBA classes today, the top of the crop are all wanting to become social entrepreneurs. They want to become change makers, building businesses that have got a social purpose to build and become more aligned to what they want to see into the world. So it is a significant shift, and I've seen it before in the last 10 years. Absolutely
do you
significant.
think it's something to do with the, generational change in terms of the mindset of scarcity versus abundance? Like, you know, um, the idea of, previous generations, really trying to make it through and actually make sure that they have enough, and it's all about making sure that they can financially survive. We've
Mm.
moved past that. We've lived in the
Yep.
land of milk and honey for quite some time, and
Yep.
and now it's about, again, sort of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Yeah.
situation where we're actually at self-actualization, and
Mm.
that's what this
Mm.
younger generation is all about.
Yeah, I think that that's part of it. I mean, I think that they've had a look at their parents who have been the achievers and the
Hmm.
ones that are setting the goals and building houses, getting bigger cars and everything else. And they've
Yeah.
actually looked at that and said, actually, they're not actually really happy. That hasn't
Mm,
been the answer to their happiness and where they want to
mm,
be. So they're saying, well, when I go into my environment, I want to be able to see a different way of doing things than my parents did that
mm,
hopefully will bring me more happiness and well-being. But you've also got the external factors of climate change and sustainability there, and also the communication aspects of our younger generation today are just far more connected. They're getting far more different views and perspectives to help them make a more informed judgment.
mm, mm. So let's talk about social enterprise, because the old microeconomic concept that firms exist to make decisions to maximize profits, is it an
Mm.
add-on to say now that firms actually have a social conscience and have some sort of social obligation to help community? uh, ha-
Yeah, well, this is like the polarities, I suppose, where you can look at one polarity being a pure for-profit, large corporate greed-driven model to pure social enterprise. That's the only reason why it exists is to serve the community.
mm,
But I think the real growth is going to happen somewhere in the middle. Um, our foundation has been very active in this building the social enterprise movement in Australia over the last 10 years.
mm, mm,
We see that as one of our core initiatives that we try and drive. And it's blossoming beautifully. We've now got national organisations and peak bodies, and now negotiating in government circles for the budget coming up to make sure that we've got more money coming into the sector. So the maturity of the sector has been great to see. What I think is happening is that from the consumer's point of view, they have less choices to be able to make a difference. They don't have enough capital to be able to make significant donations where they feel they're shifting the dial at all, and that they're getting a little bit tired of every email message opening up as from another charity begging for money. So that
Mm.
they feel like they're giving what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But what where they do have power is the ability to buy products that are aligned to a social purpose. So, for example, if I'm going to, you've got a choice. You can buy toilet paper from Kleenex, which is going to go. The profits will then go to a multinational corporation based in Chicago, or you can buy Who Gives a Crap, which is the famous toilet brand in Australia for
Allan,
social
Allan,
entrepreneurship.
you are plugging our episode with Simon
I,
Griffiths.
I
Thank you
I
very
heard it.
much.
I did hear
Yep.
that episode. It was wonderful.
Yep.
He's a
Yeah.
wonderful. That's a
Oh, isn't
wonderful
he?
example of social entrepreneurship. But you can
Exactly.
see from a consumer's point of view, you've got choices.
Yes.
You can buy Who Gives a Crap toilet paper, and 50% of the profits go to sanitation programs in the world, or you can buy Kleenex and it's go to. Now the dollars going out the door are not greatly different, but one is making a change. So
Yes.
this process of social enterprise and social entrepreneurship, what it's doing is providing energy into the consumer market for them to make better, more informed choices that's going to have social benefits, which gives them a feeling I've got power. I'm actually
Mm.
doing some small thing that's actually making a difference.
Mm. It's amazing. I'm also amazed by this whole this thought leadership and the founding of this idea, the funding network,
Hmm.
which is now in existence. Could you explain how you started it and what it's achieving at present? Because it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, great. Well, I was approached by a lady called Lisa Cotton, who was bringing the concept originally developed out of the UK by a gentleman called Fred Mulder. And the model is very simply we bring three social entrepreneurs into the room. They've got a 6 minute pitch and a 6 minute question and answer period. And the funding network gathers usually 100 to 150 people in the room, and then once the entrepreneur's done the pitch, then someone comes out and says, okay, the facilitator comes out and said, look, who's willing to pledge Joe on his new passion to change the world? I'll donate $100. I'll donate $200. I'll give $500 if someone wears a yellow hat next Saturday night at the footy. That sort of a bit of fun and banter, but the collective process is usually on an average night we can raise 150 grand on average. Now, $50,000 fundraising for early stage social entrepreneur, really important. It fills in those gaps between uh, friends and family who originally start up a small business
Can you
to.
explain why an ordinary, maybe, and I'm not sure if this is the case or not, but an ordinary business that is starting out, and a social enterprise that is
Yeah,
starting out,
sure.
is there any greater need for a social enterprise to have that initial capital than
Yeah.
a normal startup?
Yes, it is. And that is that. So to define a social enterprise is really where a social enterprise is where it's been created for the purpose of doing some positive impact into the community. So
Mm.
its reason for existence is to serve others. So that's
Hmm.
the framing of a social enterprise. We're of course a for-profit, we all know. So when you go in the traditional channels of a for-profit structure, you do have access into traditional banking structures and securities, etc. As a social enterprise, that's very limited because often the profit component of the goods that you are selling is used into the support services for perhaps women going through domestic violence that are now working in a catering organization. Well, they need support to be able to help them complete their 40-hour week that they're doing because they've got internal challenges that's happening in their community. So that
Yes.
profit component is used to support the employment of someone from domestic violence. That's an example of a social enterprise. So therefore, the bottom line driver profitability isn't as good as a for-profit. So therefore, access to capital becomes very difficult. That's why many of them use organizations like the funding network to be able to get more capital to deliver more social good. So that's
In,
why it exists.
in some ways, these potentially private donors, rather than actually providing assistance to a particular charity, being able to donate to start up a business that has an ongoing
Hmm.
longevity in helping could be actually a much more sustainable way of really
Hmm.
making change. Would that be true?
Well, most certainly, and that's really what the social enterprise model is seeking to provide the answer. In other words, we want to be able to have trading activity that's generating a profitable component that supports the cost of delivering the community benefit. So, in other
Mm,
words, a good social enterprise really needs capital and support for the first 3 to 5 years. But at the end of that 5 year period, they really should be now sustainable, standing on their own 2 feet from the profits that are generated from the trading activity
mm,
is matching the costs going out to support their community members that they're
mm,
helping. So the more social enterprises that we create, we've really got a funding gap of the first 5 years. But after that, they keep on delivering social good into the community at zero cost to the community.
mm.
So it just makes common sense to support social enterprise.
And it stops the future Simon Griffiths from having to get on the toilet and live television to get that additional capital.
Exactly.
One of the greatest bits of advertising that anyone
Yeah,
has ever done, right?
brilliant marketing that was. Absolutely brilliant
Yeah.
marketing.
Um, so, so if you could just describe the sort of auction style event that goes on with the funding network as well, because that was quite interesting to me.
Hmm. So really, when the social entrepreneur comes out and does the 6 minute pitch, um, it's got to be a compelling story. I mean, and obviously, it's 6 minutes to tell their total passion for the enterprise that they've created. So they're always really smicked. I mean, the funding network provides coaching sessions to the entrepreneurs about how to deliver the best possible pitch, etc.
Mm,
And then within the room itself, there's a lightness to it, and it's not the person who donates $100 is recognised just as much as those that donated 1,000. I
mm,
mean,
mm,
so there is equality and respect for every resource that's in the room to do it,
mm.
but it becomes a much more lighter, fun thing when you start getting match donations and people saying, listen, particularly when it's getting towards the end of the night and the room's feeling a little dry, like the wallets are a little bit empty, closed up, and you're just trying to get somewhere. I'll match everybody who gives $100 up to the next $1,000. All of a sudden,
Yeah,
all right, I'll do one more hundred.
yeah, yeah,
It just builds the energy in the room, but with a lightness and fun. Yeah.
yeah. That's great. That's great. Um, okay, so tell me about this because I think you talked about previously aligning a firm with the internal dimensions of who we are as human beings.
Mm.
Um, how does that happen in practical terms, particularly for a full profit enterprise?
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you how it happened for me. And I obviously I was a little bit of a different model because I had the foundation was now the largest shareholder. And
Mm,
so how we went about it from that story was that we had a 10-year vision that was put together. We wanted to create a 10-year BHAG, as Jim Collins used to tell us to do all those years ago,
hmm
about where do we want to be in the world in 10 years. And the leadership team went away and came back with a very clear vision about what that could look like, a number of key components. And then I looked at it from the foundation's perspective. So, okay, well, looking at the dividend streams that we are going to get from this forecasted growth, what could we do? What sort of impact could we create? And I sat down and did the mathematical numbers on the spreadsheet and worked it all the way through. And I came up with that we could fund 1 million people out of poverty if we were able to achieve that 10-year vision. So then I was able to take that back to the leadership team in the company and saying, not only can we achieve the corporate goals and objectives for our shareholders, but the social impact that we can create is to fund 1 million people out of poverty through microfinance programs in the developing world. And we went and got all our figures audited and all our assumptions made by both the charity and our external auditors. Then we went through putting up all our posters around the organisation to be able to show, and in the key initiatives, and in the middle was this one ribbon of funding 1 million people out of poverty. What what that changed was when in our recruiting processes, we suddenly started getting uh, winning 9 out of 10 of the talent, where we used to win 50%. So the quality of people started coming into the organisation because of a social aspect
mm,
meant that we had better quality staff. We ended up having better quality customers, and so the economic engine kept on delivering that outcome. Where I'm leading to there is that that's driven by a vision about what you want to create into the world that's something different than just purely money.
Mm,
And so I really encourage leaders that are looking at doing their strategic planning sessions to
mm,
not only just look at the dry corporate numbers and return to shareholder funds.
mm,
There's a broader picture than that. And sometimes some of these great social initiatives that can be brought about from a corporate entities don't have to cost a lot of money, but they can move people's hearts and minds and create significant impact. You know, we
mm,
we set up a vision at one stage to get our customers involved in our social purpose. And we said, we can add $1 a week to your rental contract, that will go towards microfinance programs and moving towards our goal, we'll match it. And we end up getting 8,000 customers adding $1 a week to their rental contract. So
mm,
we were now able to get 8,000 customers for a very small amount, but
mm,
get them engaged in our vision and our purpose to deliver the outcomes we wanted to see in the world.
mm.
So it's a powerful tool for a small amount of money to bring about influence and change.
Has it changed anything for you, Alan, in your interactions with your own family, in your own sense of well-being, and your I don't know whether you could even comment on physical health, the idea that you've moved from pure entrepreneurship and for-profit business into this other world.
Oh, I think, from a family's perspective, I mean, we've got a family foundation, as I mentioned, and so we allocate 20% of our grant making goes to individual members of the family. So that way, each one of our children can select a particular area of passion that they have in the world that they want to see change, so they can get actively participating in it.
Hmm. Hmm.
They've done field trips into the field with me to India and Philippines and Nepal, all sorts of different places. So we do field trips together to actually see some of the work. So from a family, it's certainly been a wonderful vehicle. But from a health and well-being perspective, just a journey in life. Um, it means you're feeling much more whole. You don't feel partial. You know, you're
Mm,
feeling like you bring the best version of yourself into the space that you're living on a day-to-day moment, and
mhm,
shaping that philosophy of truth, beauty, and goodness. That whole approach of seeing life as being a journey where you can be of benefit to another, and that you can actually feel whole in the steps that you're taking each day. That's a really healthy way to live, I think.
yeah, I wonder whether it actually improves resilience as well, because there's always that fallback position that, whether or not you're meeting your financial targets as a business, as an example, there's still an
Mm.
outcome, an altruistic outcome that is
Yeah.
occurring regardless.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, my grant making budgets today are significantly less than what they were at the peak of our business times.
Sure.
But our approach to how we give, we've got a strategy called Engage Philanthropy, which means we give not only financially, but we also use our skills and resources to be able to network and bring in others to do public speaking at events for charities, those sorts of components, to saying how can we use our skills to positively impact others that's not linked to a dollar.
Mm.
And that refining that skill is just good fun. It's good creativity. It makes us work harder at how we can do things, but we get some terrific outcomes.
It's fantastic. Now, on the flip side, have you ever felt like you've pursued profitability and made the financial decisions that perhaps weren't in alignment with your values? And how did it make you feel? How did you handle these situations?
Hmm. Oh, I think that I don't think you'll ever find an entrepreneur that hasn't made a bad decision along the way, or something that regretted afterwards. And sometimes this can be from lack of information, or gaps in your knowledge. I think that um, if you've got the right intention or attunement about what you're trying to achieve in the longer journey, you tend to make better informed decisions if you've got a clear vision about what your outcomes you're trying to achieve into the world. If it's just about making money for money's sake, it's such a hollow existence that it's hard to be inspired. It's hard for the best version of yourself to step forward, because it's a a rat's wheel that continually keeps on turning. There's
Mm.
got to be more to the journey than this. We've got to be able to say, nothing wrong with business. It's great to make good success, but gee whiz, how can I use the skills and resources that I've learnt from all this time better attuned to greater outcomes?
Now, I know, Alan, that you mentor quite a few CEOs and you're in touch with quite a few business leaders. Have you ever seen any of those individuals that are just completely focused on money actually become very, very successful?
Oh no, there's plenty of those out there. Not that I'd ever be coaching or mentoring them. They don't make my list.
Hmm.
So, but no, there's there's many of them out there. The world is full of it, you know, and that's part of the capitalist model. I mean, I get back to this polarity stuff. We've got to have the blend of both sides of it. You know, fortunately, we've got to get this sense of capitalism uses a force for good movement is bringing greater energy to get that balance in the polarities. We've
Mm,
still got far too much excess of those multi-billionaires that are taking away massive amount of resources out of the pool
mm.
compared to the growing numbers of people that are just surviving, you know, and we need better balance.
Now, you've kind of mentioned it a little bit, Alan, but I talk. Where a podcast title is "It's Never About Money." What comes to mind um, when you heard that name?
Well, it resonated because you're absolutely right. You know, it's not just about money. I mean, it's money is really just a construct that we attach meaning to. You know, but it is a very important part of our way as we as a society live and how we trade and all those sorts of things about what we do with it. But you're right on the money about trying to develop these other aspects that moves like a dance with money. So it's not just about money itself, but it's an easy flowing dance of taking those resources and redirecting them where they have greater positive impacts into our communities.
Mm, mm. Now, what in your going forward? You're doing all this great work. What's still to do? You've had a pretty amazing career thus far. What's still to do? What keeps you up at night? What keeps you ticking?
I'm just continually encouraged by the social enterprise movement and leaders who are growing more and more aware of their potential to be change makers. I really see my role as just being creating those ripples of social change through others. So
Mm,
if I'm
mm,
working with leaders who've got that potential to bring about the sort of change they want to see into the world, my role is helping them refine. Often they've got grand visions, they've got a great heart, they're smart as all hell. But it's that execution component between those that vision and the delivery. How do you deal with those complexities? And the role that I play with the CEOs I work with is really a one-on-one. I am their space, their safe space to come to share their FUD factors, this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, you know, because we all have those, you know, and what does that actually mean for them? And how can I help them see a way to recognize that that is life. We all have complexities. We all have those fear, uncertainties, of doubt, but you must never forget that we've also got that wonderful capacity to step through those and find solutions because we do it all the time.
mm.
So it's that refinement of the internal space that gets uncertain into the external space where there's an executable outcome that makes it feel whole.
It's incredible. Um, you've probably, I mean, you listened to the Simon Griffiths episode, as we
Mm.
know. So this is not going to catch you unawares, but it's the last question that I usually ask, which I should probably change now because I like catching people unawares. What spirit animal would you be and why?
A good spirit animal would I be and why? To be honest, I have not give that one iota of.
Yes, perfect. Shall I'll just keep talking now while you have a quick think about it.
What would I be and why? I would probably be strive to be the wise owl that's quietly looking at the world and seeing it for what it is.
Great one. It's
Mm.
awesome. Alan, this has been fantastic. I have connected with so many points that you've made. It's a bit of an echo chamber here at It's Never About Money, selecting those guests that I believe really resonate with the themes of the podcast. And I mean, yeah, you embody a lot of the themes of this podcast. So appreciate everything that you've been doing and you will continue to do, and appreciate you giving us your insights. This community is privileged to be able to hear this, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I've enjoyed the chat.
Good on you.
Take care. Bye.
I hope that this one was enjoyable to listen to and there were some moments of value. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.